Michael Mercado yesterday, an unfortunate start for the young starter making his second professional or second major league start with the Phillies, his third appearance with the Phillies. You know what the thing with this game, this particular outing was, John? Like, I don't necessarily look at this and have a ton of worry. I don't necessarily look at this and go, well, maybe the first start was more towards a flash in the pan, or maybe it was the fact that the Cubs have struggled. When you have a start like Michael Mercado did, it's pretty easy to pinpoint why he struggled. It's one word. It's command.
Man, yeah.
The command was terrible yesterday.
It was. The first 8 pitches were just all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was particularly competitive in a lot of at-bats. And when you can't locate your fastball, which I think was the primary concern for him yesterday, was he wasn't really able to locate his fastball. You have to start to go to other pitches. And we talked about him after his start in Chicago. I thought his best pitch against the Cubs was the cutter. And he ended up, I felt, leaning towards the cutter a lot more to get pitches over the plate, like just to get back into counts. He started leaning on the cutter a lot more. And I think for the most part did a nice job in the first inning of limiting the damage and really heavily relied on the cutter to get out of that, kind of tightrope his way out of danger. But when you are then leaving 90, 91 up in the zone like he was with the cutter, because that's kind of where his cutter's at, is about 91, 92, because you can't trust your fastball, opposing teams are going to start sitting on your breaking stuff. And I know cutter's a loose term to say for a breaking ball, but like the curveball wasn't particularly sharp. He kind of relied on the cutter heavily. So to me, when you can't spot the fastball like he was clearly unable to do in yesterday's start, I felt like he started gripping tighter. Like he started gripping the pitches tighter, and his arm slot was off. I think he was trying to almost place his pitches where he wanted them to go, as opposed to being a pitcher and pitching. Like you could see that snap of the curveball. He was like really dramatic with it, trying to get guys to go fishing for it. And he bounced it a couple times. There was the pass ball on Stubbs. It probably was considered a wild pitch, but I think everything played off of the fact that he just didn't have any command of his fastball yesterday. And when I see a start like that, yeah, it was a bad start. It was actually a pretty horrendous start, if we're being honest. But command issues oftentimes tend to fix themselves within one start.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is with a young guy like this, you're going to have some good outings. You're going to have some outings like yesterday's. It's tough because you see Mercado in his first start, and you see the potential, right? And we all think this guy's great. Fifth starter problem is solved. But the thing with these younger pitchers is it's the consistency. A lot of times, that the talent's there. On certain days when the command's there as well, they can look fantastic, and then on other days, it's just not there. And you're going to have more of those days from younger pitchers as opposed to veterans.
Yeah, so we got a graphic for you from Mercado's. Ended up going an inning and 2/3. Really did not. Again, we talked about the command. There's a couple of pitches on here, John, that I immediately saw and I laughed at. I think you're going to laugh at too, and I think you're going to know exactly which ones they are pretty quickly. They're the ones that don't fully appear in this screenshot. I mean, if you look at this, the thing with this is it's command. 3 different locations are terrible, right? That upper left quadrant that you're looking at, which is up and in on lefties, or excuse me, up and in on righties, up and away to lefties. That lower right quadrant that you're looking at, which is basically off the back foot and further away to lefties, and not even a competitive pitch to righties. Those 2 are obviously concerning. That's where he missed a lot. But to me, where he got in the most trouble, because he was trying to overthrow the curveball, because he didn't feel like he was confident in the fastball, if you look at that the middle upper quadrant of the strike zone, that is not a spot that you want.
That's not somewhere you want to throw.
No. So when you have, when your command is it's just lost on you in any particular day, and you're missing up here and you're missing down there, that pitch, that's where they're sitting. That middle, that basically, it's not, they call it the nitro zone. It's a little bit above the nitro zone, but professional hitters are going to jump on those pitches. And it was just a a snowball effect, right? Rolling downhill of command was bad up, trying to snap the curveball down, and then all of a sudden, when you miss, you basically miss right over the heart of the plate. And I think those three combined for what was a bad performance from Michael Mercado.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that chart, and for folks listening on, podcast after the fact without the visual, there were pretty much no pitches in the corners of the strike zone to be found on that graph. It was either missing a mile up and in, a few of them just planted in the dirt, and then the other place he was missing when he's not hitting the quarters was right over the heart of the plate. And like you said, Tyler, major league hitters, they're going to take advantage of that, especially some of the hitters that the Braves have.
Yeah, and I think that when you basically become a one-pitch pitcher as a starter, guys are going to get locked in. So we talked about the fastball command, and it just wasn't there. The curveball was probably the other concerning pitch to me. Was, we were talking about how it felt like he was just really laboring and trying to snap that curveball through. When you have positive pitchers counts, 1-2, 0-2, you still can't just say, all right, here, I'm spiking this curveball. If you chase it, great. If you don't, it's 2-2. It still needs to be a competitive pitch. And I think even in counts, the few counts that he did get ahead in, where he was trying to throw the curveball for a put-away pitch as opposed to a get-me-over strike type of curveball, they weren't particularly competitive. And like you said, when you have a lineup that's as professional as this Braves lineup is, even the guys that are struggling, they've been in this league a long time. They know what non-competitive pitches are. And a lot of times yesterday, it felt like Mercado's curveball was non-competitive. So to me, that was the other one that was of concern, was if you can't spot the fastball and the curveball almost feels like it almost feels like hey, Javi Baez would swing at this pitch, but probably nobody else in baseball, it becomes an uncompetitive pitch. And you see me, like, for those that are watching on the video platforms, I smile, I kind of shake my head, I shrug my shoulders. To me, this is more indicative of a guy, and Rob Thompson brought this up in the postgame press conference, of a guy who's making his first ever start on what we call regular 4 days rest. He's been in the bullpen. He's gotten some extended start time in the minor leagues. Thompson said he's never made a start on 4 days rest before. I have to think a young kid facing a good lineup on what looked to be a hot, humid day in Atlanta, I think probably just struggled to kind of put it all together. And to me, I feel fairly confident, John. I don't know how you feel. I feel fairly confident as kind of chalking this up as a bad start.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what you do, Tyler. Right? You just flush it. Mercado, to the extent he gets more chances, there'll be good starts, there'll be bad starts. And I don't think, just the same way we should have kept our expectations reasonable after the first start, and it was a good first start. But I think to some extent we get our hopes up too high. I don't think now, after his second start goes sideways, we say, okay, well, I never want to see Mercado on the mound again. So, hopefully he has a bright future, but he's obviously still a work in progress. And let's face it, he's up here because of necessity, because Taijuan Walker was hurt and Spencer Turnbull was hurt. And even for a team with good depth, now that depth starting to get tested. Sure. So you get guys like Mercado and the guy who I think we're about to talk about, and Tyler Phillips.
Yeah, and the one thing before we kind of transition from the bad to the good of yesterday's game, the velocity still was there for Mercado, kind of in the average range that he typically throws his fastball.
Yeah.
I believe he sat his slowest fastball was 92.9, which at 93 at the low end, I'm not going to complain about. I think he reached 96.2. So he was basically somewhere in the range of 92 to 96. The velocity was where I believe Rob Thompson and the group wanted it to be. And I will say this. I know that you really had to piecemeal the rest of the game together to basically get 22 outs out of your bullpen. But I think in that particular scenario, Rob Thompson made the right decision to get him out of the game when he did, because I don't want to ruin this kid's confidence after what was a good start against Chicago and what now is a bad start against the Braves. I was okay with the quick hook by Rob Thompson yesterday.